Welcome, everybody. I am so glad that you're here. We're going to start right on time. And today we're diving into a topic that I think is on all of our minds this time of year, which is, of course, cold and flu season. But rather than focusing on fear and frustration, what I really wanted to talk about tonight is about how to protect your family with smart science-backed strategies that actually work. And yes, I promise this will be a lot more fun than standing in line at the pharmacy with a runny nose. I'm Dr. Owen Wiseman, and I'm very excited to be speaking with all of you tonight. If at any point this will be recorded and you can come back to it. First off, a big thank you to Healthy Planet for inviting us on to talk to all of you about immune health and looking after your families. If you get a chance in the future or at any point and you want to scan this QR code from the recording or take a screenshot, it will take you directly to the Avogel store on Healthy Planet's website, where anything we talk about tonight can be found. Now, you might be wondering why I'm welcoming you with this gorgeous Swiss mountain scene. It's not just because it's beautiful, though that does help. This is actually where Alfred Vogel, the founder of A. Vogel, found inspiration in nature. And it's a reminder that health really is a lot more than just avoiding illness. It's really about thriving. And nature gives us the tools to do just that. Now, here's where we are headed today. So, what we're going to be talking about is how to actually how infections get started and how do we stop them before they take hold. We'll look at how to protect the people who are most vulnerable. We're talking about kids and seniors. I'd like to kind of explore a little bit about the huge role of antibiotic resistance and why prevention matters more now than it ever has in the past. And then finally, what I'd like to do is leave some time for questions in the chat. So you should all have access to the chat if you just click on your phone or whatever device you're joining us from. And that way you can walk out with answers that are tailored to your own concerns. So if that does sound good, then I would say let's jump in. So before I dive in and I get to really get excited about what we're talking about, I want to throw it back to you. So right now, what is your biggest cold and flu concern? Is it your kids bringing home daycare germs? Is it missing work? Is it that one uncle who you know is going to sneeze like a cannon at Thanksgiving dinner coming up in a couple of weeks? Take a second to just think about it. Because the reason I ask is because as we go through tonight's webinar, you're going to see that these concerns are shared across all of us. So if you feel comfortable and you want to share in the chat, I might just take a quick peek over to that. But I know as we're thinking about this question, you can throw anything in. So, what I wanted to do is start and bring this down to the provincial level. So, with Healthy Planet being located in Ontario, I really wanted to hone in a bit on this province. So, Ontario, like much of Canada, has faced unusually early and intense viral seasons since the pandemic. So, flu isn't politely waiting until December anymore. It is showing up in October and sometimes, honestly, even earlier. And hospitals are already under pressure. We know that ERs, emergency rooms, are stretched with respiratory syncytial virus, which you'll hear me refer to as RSV, flu, COVID, parainfluenza virus. They're all circulating at once. And that overlap creates more sick people and it creates more confusion. Families don't know what virus they're dealing with, and providers are juggling with competing demands. Who do I have to actually focus on? And on the ground, the impact is real. I see it in my own patients when they come into the clinic. Parents are spending hours in ER waiting rooms. They just released a report on how many people actually leave the waiting room annually, and the numbers are staggering. We know that sometimes people are waiting in the ER overnight. Kids are missing school, parents are missing work, caregivers. For older adults, maybe yourself caring for aging parents, you're balancing multiple appointments. Got to bring mom here, got to bring her here. Oh, what about that appointment? These small disruptions really add up to a significant strain on families and the health system alike. This is about how those germs actually start to ripple through our communities. And I'm seeing, yeah, a couple of things here. Other people's hygiene practices. Yeah, we can guarantee our hygiene practices, but not so much for other people. So let's get one thing straight because we know when we experience it, cold and flu are more than just a sneeze or a sniffle. These viruses can really quickly spiral into ear infections, sinus infections, bronchitis, or even pneumonia. And that is why prevention is so important. And if we stop that domino effect early, if we kind of cut it off further up here, then we actually don't just avoid Kleenex piles on the coffee table, which is a very familiar picture for many of us, I'm sure. We actually keep people out of the doctor's offices and we keep our kids in the classroom. So, zooming in once more on Ontario's data, so those respiratory syncytial virus hospitalizations more than doubled compared to what we saw before the pandemic. So that means infants and young kids are showing up in hospitals in record numbers. Often, some of them are needing oxygen support because their oxygen saturation is lower than we would like. And at the same time, flu emissions surged and they actually hit the highest levels in over a decade. So picture that for a second. Hospitals are already busy with RSV and then a wave of flu patients on top of that. And COVID 19 did not take a season off. It's going to add additional pressure even coming up, especially among infants under 12 and 12 months and older adults. And for families, this is exhausting. Kids under 5 bear the brunt of this burden, and anyone who has cared for a sick toddler knows how disruptive it is, not just at home, but across workplaces and communities. And that surge in illness has a knock on effect. So, more prescriptions, more antibiotic use, and even when the infections are viral, which does bring us to another conversation because surge in illness is going to drive a big increase in antibiotic use, even when most infections are viral. This is where prevention connects to the bigger picture of antimicrobial resistance. Over 90% of respiratory tract infections are viral. Antibiotics do not work against these. But here's the problem. In children, up to 75% of antibiotic prescriptions are still being written for colds and related infections that are bacterial based. And why does this matter? This is coming from the Pan Canadian Action Plan on Antimicrobial Resistance, which is a really, really great document, a really good read. I highly suggest you kind of take a peek. I'm hoping that we'll be talking to you about the 2024-2025 report in the months ahead. So fingers crossed there. So why does it matter? Every unnecessary prescription is like training bacteria to become smarter and stronger. We end up with resistant infections that are harder to treat when we really need antibiotics that work. So imagine calling the fire department every time you light a candle. They'll eventually stop showing up, even when there is a real fire burning down your home. And Health Canada's own Pan Canadian Action Plan on Antimicrobial Resistance highlights this as a national priority. By focusing on prevention, they talk about stopping infections early, reducing spread, and minimizing complications. That doesn't just help individuals. We help protect antibiotics as a resource for everybody. So they'll still work when your child or your grandchild has strep throat or your parent develops pneumonia. Prevention is public health. That is the one thing that we know. And the goal, again, reducing complications naturally so we avoid this. Now, before your eyes kind of glaze over at the word science, don't worry. I promise this will be like the Cliff Notes version. Think about it as immunology on a coffee break. Simple, digestible, no Latin exams at the end. I promise you that. So I really just want to strip it down for how viruses sneak in, how bacteria take advantage, and where things go sideways in our loved ones. So let's demystify this for a second. So it's a pretty involved image, but here's the trick that viruses play. They don't just cause misery on their own, they also roll out the welcome mat for bacteria. I often explain this to my own patients that it's kind of like the dock at a friend's cottage or a family cottage. The virus is going to build the dock, and then bacteria are going to pull up their boats to the dock and they're going to park. And once they're parked, they're not going to leave quietly. They're going to throw a party that absolutely nobody wants. It's going to be ear infections, sinus infections, you name it. And the worst part is that the bigger that bacterial party gets, the harder it's going to be to kick them all out. So it starts with a virus getting into the body. And then what's happening is we're getting these toxic bacterium that are causing inflammation and irritation. And it gets worse because what happens is that imagine that not just one boat, but an entire flotilla of boats show up and they all lash together. That is what we call a biofilm. That is bacteria sticking together in clusters, and that makes them incredibly hard to break apart. And RSV infections in kids are notorious for setting this up. So once that biofilm actually forms, it is like trying to separate Lego pieces that have been glued together with super glue. And the result is, again, these really stubborn infections, including lung infections, that just keep coming back. And of course, kids are usually the ones paying the price because their immune system is still warming up to the big leagues. They are basically walking petri dishes, and their systems are still learning. They're still making mistakes. They are still forgetting their homework. And then you add in daycare or school where one sneeze traveling at over 50 miles per second across the room, more than 6 meters, that can set off a chain reaction. And now you've got the perfect storm. So that is why parents see infection after infection after infection, not because kids are weak, but because they're literally training their immune systems in real time. And unfortunately, that training comes with a lot of ear infections and sick days from school. Now, this slide is, in my opinion, one of the most important, I would say, in the whole presentation because it really grounds us in reality. When you look at a lot of the most recent data that's come out this year, we know Indigenous and Northern communities in Canada, they actually get respiratory infections at rates that far exceed the average that we see across the country. So in Nunavut, for example, nearly 1 in 6 infants has been hospitalized for acute respiratory infections within just a decade. That is a really staggering number and disheartening. And when you dig deeper, again, RSV is one of the main culprits. But it's not just about the virus, but about the conditions that are actually making these infections harder to prevent and treat. It's overcrowded housing, it's limited access to healthcare, and it's barriers to preventative services that we maybe take for granted in Southern Ontario, that we have so much access relative to some of the more northern communities. And so these are really social issues more than medical to a degree. And when we talk about prevention strategies like Echinaforce, which we'll talk about in a bit, we're not suggesting there's a silver bullet, but what we are saying is that prevention matters even more in communities where resources are stretched thin and the stakes are even higher. So this isn't just about the average Canadian family in Toronto or Ottawa. It's about recognizing where the needs are the greatest and how do we actually help. And that's where we can go, okay, we'll take a breath. We've talked about all the doom and gloom, and now we're going to pivot to solutions. So, this is where Echinaforce steps onto the stage. And again, it's not about magic bullets or silver linings, but really about tools that we can put in our toolkit to help parents, to help kids, and to help seniors defend themselves against what's out there. So, I'm going to show you actually a little quick video because I just think instead of just taking my word for it, this piece is one of my favorites because I think it really captures the heart of Echinaforce. It's 70 years of tradition and trust and science all kind of rolled into one.
70 years ago, a single seed grew into a legacy. A legacy of fresh, sustainably sourced ingredients and a pioneering mission to unveil the secrets of nature. We bridge the gap between nature and science, backed by clinical research in more than 30 scientific studies. Available in over 30 countries worldwide. To help relieve the symptoms of cold and flu by supporting the immune system.
We have to go back to nature.
Made by nature, discovered by science. Echinaforce, trusted for 70 years.
So I just love that video. We'll talk about that in just a second, but what is it? Right? That's ultimately the question. How does it help? What is it? What are we talking about here? So here's where we get into the real substance of Echinaforce. So first, it's made from fresh Echinacea purpurea, which is actually organically grown in Switzerland. So when we took a video, took a look at that image at the beginning, that is a really, really powerful image, right? And that is where it's coming from. And that word fresh is really key because when you harvest and you use the plant right away, you capture the highest level of active compounds. And I like to often explain it to my own patients. Think of it like eating a strawberry right off the vine versus one that's been sitting there a couple of weeks later after a long truck ride to make it to a grocery store near you. I think the difference is probably night and day between what we see there. And what does the research actually tell us? I just tried to grab a few of my favorite studies, and in a randomized big trial, 755 people, they were taking Echinoforce every single day. And not only did it reduce the number of colds, but also the need for cold medications and even painkillers, which is not a stat that we often talk about. So really, it's about reducing the burden when people do get sick and preventing them from getting sick in the first place. And for kids, the data is equally as compelling. A prevention study in school age children showed that Echinoforce Junior tablets reduced confirmed influenza infections, so that antiviral effect, by over 50%. Again, what does that mean? Fewer ear infections, fewer trips to the doctor, fewer antibiotics, fewer exposures to a walk in clinic or an ER. And for parents, that is the difference between missing 2 weeks of work in January versus just a few days. And the last really important thing is that safety has been confirmed in groups that are often left with very few options, like pregnant and nursing women. In fact, it's one of the only natural remedies in Canada for cold and flu that has been validated for safety in pregnant and nursing women, which is really exciting. So, if we zoom out, it's a lot more than just another immune product. It is really this evidence based tool that can help lighten the load on your families or arguably even the healthcare system. And like we saw in that video, 70 years is a long time to stick around. Think about it. The company itself is 102 years old, and this one product line under the company is over 70 years old. Very few products can kind of claim that type of longevity because it isn't some wellness trend that showed up on TikTok yesterday. It has been used, as you saw in that video, by millions worldwide across 30 different countries. It is integrated into healthcare systems like in Switzerland and South Africa, where it's even covered under public health insurance, which blows my mind. And that longevity speaks to two things. First, the science stands the test of time. And second, families keep coming back to it generation after generation. If it didn't work, it would not have made it this far. And from a retail practice, that's gold. I mean, 70 years of trust is you're offering us something that really works, which I always really like. And the big thing is there's always ongoing research. So brand new research that just came out in May, at the end of May of this year, shows and helps explain why kids get hit so hard. Certain viruses like RSV or human parainfluenza virus, specifically strain 3 in this case, they actually make kids' airways stickier. So, what that means is viruses kind of flip a molecular light switch in the body, and suddenly bacteria like strep and Haemophilus influenzae, they actually find it much easier to grab on. And once they're attached, they don't just sit quietly, kind of enjoying themselves. They start to multiply, they start to spread, and they start to cause bigger problems. With RSV, respiratory syncytial virus, bacterial stickiness went up almost 9 times, and which with HPIV3, again, over 9 times. So that is really this open invitation for the bacteria to set up shop. So when parents say, oh, my child gets one cold and then it turns into pneumonia or ear infection, that science shows us why. But what was really interesting in it is that Echinaforce actually was shown to block the whole process. It fought viruses directly by preventing them from attaching to that Velcro and spreading in the first place. It stopped that sticky switch from flipping on, which means the bacteria could not pile up. And it was amazing because it actually cut bacterial binding by 60 to 80%. So it's clearing away those harmful biofilms that we talked about earlier, where the boats all formed a raft and it was really hard to get them apart. That's going to prevent bacterial buildup. And that's going to actually help keep the natural balance in our airway intact. So instead of waiting until a kid has an ear infection and then treating it with antibiotics, we can actually step in sooner and we can prevent that viral bacterial cascade from happening in the real world. And all of this research is super exciting, but again, how does it actually translate into day-to-day life? What does it look like for parents, for kids, for busy families, for healthcare providers? So real world use. When we talk to parents, the number one concern during cold and flu season isn't the illness itself, it's often the disruption as a result of that illness, right? Every cold means lost school days, like we talked about. And for working parents, that often means scrambling to find childcare or taking time off work, which means you're using up your sick days or your vacation days. And in Ontario, respiratory infections are the leading reason for pediatric doctor visits. And we know that one sick child often means the whole household is eventually down for the count. It is exhausting. So when we talk about prevention, we really want to keep things running smoothly in the household. Those fewer last minute calls to your boss where you wake up in the morning and your kid is sniffling and you go, oh no, gotta call in. Can I work from home? No, okay. Do I have to come in? Yes, we need you in the office. And then organizing childcare. It sucks. So let's shift gears and talk antibiotics again, because remember, over 90% of those RTIs are viral, but they're still driving the majority of pediatric antibiotic prescriptions. And when we talk about kind of the vicious cycle of that, a recent Ontario study actually found that about 16% of patients that got colonized in the respiratory system with bacteria that were resistant to antibiotics, they developed infections within weeks. That is a huge red warning light going off because across Canada, again, antimicrobial resistance is linked to about 5,400 deaths a year, and that number is only expected to get bigger. That's thousands of Canadians dying because the antibiotic did not work, nor did any of the other choices for antibiotic. And the burden isn't equal. So again, we kind of see where we go back to talking about equity and equality in the healthcare system. We know that families who are already stretched thin, whether in northern communities or urban centers with limited access to care, they're going to face the greatest risks. So again, prevention is the really big thing. And when to start? This is the question I get most often is really, okay, this is all great. I'm worried. I'm worried for my family. I'm worried for my kids. I'm worried for my parents. When do I begin? So cold and flu season typically runs from September through April, and then it peaks in late fall and winter months. But if you wait until the first symptoms show up, you're already behind. So think of it like snow tires. You don't wait for the first snowstorm to put them on, although arguably most of us do. You should be doing it in advance so that you're ready when the weather turns. And prevention with Echinaforce works the same way. Starting early builds a protective baseline, helping the body respond more effectively when viruses begin circulating. And in practical terms, that means starting in September, August, before the season really kicks into gear. Because by the time the winter viruses are everywhere, families have already given their immune systems a head start. So, who really benefits from the prevention strategies? Again, kids. We've talked about this extensively. Their immune systems are still developing, they're in high exposure settings, and we know that fewer infections means fewer sick days and healthier childhoods. Parents, Every cold a child brings home often means that the whole family is going to get sick. So prevention is helping parents maintain that stability. We've got teachers and daycare staff. These are the people exposed daily to dozens of kids and dozens of viruses. So reducing infections in children actually helps to protect the adults who care for them, which is a really great community building exercise to think about. And then last is the frontline workers, healthcare providers, myself, right? Retail staff, service workers who can't afford repeated sick days. When we stay healthier, it helps keep the entire workplace and community running a bit more smoothly. But the big question that every parent, every pharmacist, every care provider, everyone at the your local store, is it safe? And the answer is backed by decades of research and use in over 30 countries, like we saw. The answer is yes. So families notice fewer colds over the season. And when they do happen, they're shorter and less severe. Fewer sick days, that's fewer doctor visits, less stress, and most importantly, as we've talked about, fewer antibiotics. So again, protect your time, protect your energy, and your peace of mind for the whole family. And let's bring it back home. Cold and flu season in Ontario is tough, but we have tools to get through it. Tools that are natural and proven. And when families choose prevention, they are going to stay stronger altogether. So that is one thing we really want to focus on. And when we talk about a Vogel and Healthy Planet asks us to come on and chat, we are talking about this 100-year commitment to doing things right. From seed to shelf, the fresh plant, sustainable organic farming, research that's published in peer-reviewed journals. It is really about making the medicine the way that nature intended and holding it to the same standard as different pharmaceuticals as well. So, one thing that many Canadians don't realize is that Avogal products, the majority of them, including Echinaforce, are actually made in Switzerland to pharmaceutical standards. And that's the same strict standards that prescription drugs have to meet. And in fact, in Switzerland, Echinoforce is so well researched, it's actually covered by public health insurance. So doctors there and pharmacists there prescribe it, and families can go and fill their prescription to pick it up as part of their regular care. Now, here in Canada, while obviously it's not covered by insurance in that way, we benefit from the exact same Swiss quality. So every bottle you see on the Canadian store shelf has gone through that same rigorous process. It's no different. So when you choose Echinoforce, you're choosing a product that's trusted by the healthcare systems themselves. And when we say the most researched immune product in Canada, it also means that we know this product inside and out. Decades of research, more than 35 clinical trials. It tells us how it works, what it interacts with, and most importantly, who it's safe for. And that level of certainty tends to sadly be rare in natural health, but we know it's safe for long term use for months, right? It's safe for children. It's uniquely even been looked at in pregnant and nursing populations. That's a group that usually gets left out of research because of course, the inherent dangers there. So that gives families a lot of confidence when they're making a choice for how to protect themselves. And here's a milestone worth pausing on that I mentioned way at the beginning. We've been around for 100 years. One purpose: harness the power of fresh plants for better health. That longevity is really important. One day you have wellness fads that are, I don't know, charcoal lattes, and then the next it's celery juice. But very few of us can say kind of we've been doing this for a century, right? And this is when you pull back the curtain a bit, what production actually looks like. I know for myself and my family, when I walk into a store, I don't know how these products are made. I don't know who made them. I don't know how their employees are treated. Are things sustainable? Is it organic? Were there pesticides? I ask all these questions myself and I get totally overwhelmed. So it's really nice to kind of see what's happening behind the scenes. So the fresh plants get harvested at their peak. They go straight into these state-of-the-art labs, and then they get tested, extracted. Every batch is tracked. And behind every product, there's that research team. So people in lab coats, clinicians running trials, specialists working on trying to refine extraction. And that ongoing investment in research and development is required for that pharmaceutical standard as well. So we just really are proud of that, to be honest. This is one of my personal favorites, and arguably, even with the little ones in my own life, it is one that gets drank quite frequently. So it's extra strength using the same strength as the Echinaforce Extra tablets, but in a really, really soothing, comforting drink. And clinical research actually has shown that its effects are comparable with Tamiflu, which is a medication, a pharmaceutical drug called oseltamivir. And that's huge because it's gone head to head with that. But unlike Tamiflu, that comes in a form of causing some side effects, Echinaforce are shown to have fewer side effects. So you can sip it as a tea. I actually just had one a little earlier. You can mix it in a smoothie. I will often freeze it into popsicles for the kids, or you can just take it straight, right? Just swig it out the bottle. So it's really powerful, it's versatile, and that makes it family friendly. Now, this spray, which I do have right beside me, that spray is a lifesaver for when you first feel that scratch in your throat, or if you've been talking for a very long time and you can feel it. That long nozzle that you see delivers the relief right where most infections start, which is the back of the throat. And it works as well in a clinical trial as a combination of lidocaine and chlorhexidine. So that is prescription level relief in a natural formula. And it is a fast acting sidekick. I think right now I probably have 4 or 5 on the go. I keep one up at clinic, I keep one in my car, I keep one right beside me when I'm talking. You could toss it in your gym bag, your backpack, your purse, and that way you're ready to fight back at the first tickle, which is really important. And here's where it all begins. It begins in the fields. So the rows of sage that are getting planted,
Als
that's
ich angefangen
used
vor 30 Jahren, haben wir alles
in the
gehabt.
spray.
Keine Maschine.
Mit so Rillenzücher, weißt du, mit Dieselrädchen.
Wirft einfach die leeren Würfel oder so.
Ja, bist gelaufen, dass du gesehen hast, wo die Reihe ist, nachher von Hand reingesetzt.
So really every plant gets grown with care. There's no synthetic pesticides. These are some of the fields of echinacea that we're flying over right now. So in that spray, you're getting the echinacea and the sage, which is a really, really powerful, potent combo, which is quite lovely. And again, they're all harvested fresh as well. And this is where design makes the difference. On the right, you see a standard throat spray, which is the kind most of us are used to. It sprays broadly and it kind of coats the front of the mouth, but it doesn't actually reach the spot where upper respiratory tract infections begin. It's like watering the sidewalk when you really want to reach the roots of a plant. So now you compare that to the other spray with the nozzle. It's long, it's slim, it's designed to deliver the spray directly to the back of the throat, exactly where viruses and bacteria take hold first. So that means faster relief, better coverage, more effective action. It is a small detail, but it makes a massive difference because when you feel that first tickle in your throat, you don't want this scattershot approach. You want precision, and that's exactly what that design gives you. And our last one that we're going to comment on before we turn it over for questions, let's not forget the kids, right? Echinoforce Junior tablets are designed to stop those snotty noses before they even start, which is keeping kids from bringing the germs home. We talked a bit about the research in reducing sick days, but one thing that's really, really cool from the research, it actually reduced antibiotic prescriptions in that clinical trial of 200 plus kids by 76%. Again, that's fewer frantic calls to work, fewer antibiotics in little bodies whose gut microbiome is still developing. And the kids love it because it's sugar free, it's orange flavored, it's parent approved. I know for the little ones in my own life, giving those out is always an exciting time because they get candy, but I always joke it's like sneaking vegetables into a dish because the kids are getting an immune support product and they don't even know it. So, as we wrap up, I want to thank you not just for your time today, but really being part of kind of the natural health movement, right? You're making choices for your family. You're choosing prevention. You're choosing natural options to keep your family healthier. And I think just like bees are small but vital to the health of the whole ecosystem, your everyday choices make a difference for our community. So that's just something I really want to recognize. And of course, we need to thank the man who started it all for us, which is Alfred Vogel himself over 100 years ago. He had the vision that nature could provide the tools for health if we respected it and if we worked with it. And that legacy is still live every single day. So as we head into another cold and flu season, remember you've got history, science, and nature on your side. And we look forward to welcoming you at the next webinar. So I'm going to head over to the chat and just see if there's any questions that we can get answered here.